Your income went up, your life got nicer, and somehow, if you're being completely honest, your financial position barely moved. You're not broke, but you're not free either. And the gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be by now is starting to feel permanent. Here's what nobody told you. That gap has nothing to do with how much you earn. It has everything to do with something most people never build. Think about two people. Same city, similar salaries. One of them stresses about money every month. The other one has a growing investment account, a full emergency cushion, and a genuine sense of financial calm. The difference between them is rarely income. Research on household finances consistently shows that earning more does not automatically produce more wealth. In fact, studies of high earners routinely find that a significant portion live with almost no financial cushion, despite making salaries most people would consider more than enough. The missing variable isn't money, it's architecture, the structural decisions about where each dollar goes before you ever get the chance to spend it. By the end of this video, you'll have a complete framework for that architecture, and you'll understand exactly why every dollar you've earned up to now that didn't have a specific assignment just quietly disappeared. I've studied the financial habits that consistently separate people who build wealth from people who earn well and stay flat. The pattern repeats regardless of income bracket. It's never about the size of the paycheck. It's always about the system surrounding it. There's a financial gravity that pulls every dollar you earn toward your current lifestyle, and it gets stronger the more you make. You've probably felt this without having a name for it. The raise arrives, for a month or two it feels significant, then the apartment gets slightly nicer, the car gets replaced a little sooner than necessary, the restaurants change, the subscriptions accumulate, the weekend trips become more frequent. 6 months later, the raise is invisible. The balance looks roughly the same as before. The financial stress hasn't lifted, it's just shifted to a higher baseline. Behavioral economists call this lifestyle inflation, but that name makes it sound like a choice. It rarely is. It's a gravitational pull, automatic, unconscious, and almost perfectly efficient at consuming whatever headroom a raise creates. Here's what makes this especially dangerous. Unlike overspending on a single large purchase, which is visible, traceable, and correctable, lifestyle inflation operates through dozens of small, individually reasonable decisions that collectively consume everything. No single transaction is the problem, the aggregate is. And this is where most people stay stuck. They assume the answer is earning more. But more income, without a pre-existing structure to route it, simply feeds a larger version of the same pattern. The gravity scales with the income. The escape route isn't earning more first, it's building the structure first, so that when the income arrives, the structure captures it before the gravity does. This is where things shift completely, and this single idea applied consistently is what separates people who build wealth from people who earn it and watch it vanish. The first money that moves when your paycheck arrives should go to your future, not your bills, not your lifestyle, your future. Most people do this backwards. They pay their expenses, they cover their lifestyle, they handle whatever comes up that month, and then, if something remains, they consider saving or investing. The problem is that nothing ever remains. Parkinson's law of finance: spending expands to fill whatever income is available after obligations are met. The structural fix is to invert the sequence entirely. Before you pay a single bill, before you make a single discretionary decision, a fixed percentage of your income routes automatically to investments. This isn't a willpower exercise, it's a calendar event. The transfer executes the moment the paycheck clears. You log in and the money is already gone, already working. What percentage? A floor of 15% is the benchmark that consistently appears in the financial research on wealth accumulation. That number isn't arbitrary. At 15% of income invested consistently over a working career in broadly diversified, low-cost index funds, the math of compound growth does something that feels almost implausible until you run it. Someone investing 15% of a $60,000 salary, $9,000 per year from age 27 onward, would, based on historical average market returns, accumulate a retirement portfolio in the range of $2 million by their mid-60s. The same person who starts at 37 instead of 27 ends up with roughly half that, despite putting in money for the same number of active working years relative to the delay. Compound growth is brutally sensitive to time. The returns in the final decade are worth more than the contributions of the first two. Where does this 15% live? The priority order is straightforward. First, any employer-sponsored retirement account where your employer matches contributions. That match is the only guaranteed 100% return available in any financial market. Capture it entirely before doing anything else. Second, a Roth IRA, which allows your investments to grow permanently free of future taxation. The contribution limits change periodically, so verify the current year's cap. Third, a taxable brokerage account for any investment capacity beyond those ceilings. What do you actually invest in? For the vast majority of people, a single, broadly diversified index fund, one that tracks the total market or a large index, is the correct answer. Not because it's exciting, because it requires no expertise, carries low fees, automatically diversifies across hundreds of companies, and has historically delivered the kind of long-term returns that make the compound math work. Set it up on automatic recurring purchases, then stop looking at it. The 15% doesn't wait to see what's left. It moves first. Everything else is built around what remains.
Here's the part most people skip, and it's the reason financial systems collapse in the first encounter with reality. An investment strategy with no emergency reserve isn't a wealth-building plan. It's a fragile structure waiting for the first crisis to unravel it. Unexpected expenses don't ask permission. A car breaks down. A health issue requires time off. A job ends faster than expected. In that moment, someone without a dedicated cash reserve faces a specific and devastating choice: liquidate investments, often at a bad time, or take on high-interest debt. Either path is expensive. Either path interrupts the compounding that makes the whole system work. The fix is a dedicated reserve, not mixed into your everyday checking account where it's invisible as a separate resource, but held in a completely distinct high-yield savings account that earns meaningful interest while remaining accessible within a few business days. How much? 5 months of your true essential expenses, not your total monthly spending, your essential floor, the costs you genuinely cannot eliminate in a crisis. Housing, utilities, basic food, minimum debt obligations, insurance. In a real emergency, the gym membership disappears, the streaming services disappear, the dining budget disappears. Your emergency reserve only needs to carry the costs you truly cannot cut. Calculate that essential monthly floor, multiply by 5. That's your target. A well-positioned high-yield savings account in 2026 pays meaningfully above inflation, currently around 4% or more at competitive online banks. Your reserve isn't just sitting idle, it's earning a real return while serving as the shock absorber that protects your investment portfolio from ever being rated prematurely. Allocate roughly 10% of your income to building this reserve until the target is reached. After that, the 10% redirects to accelerated investment contributions. But until the buffer exists, it takes priority, because a system without it is one bad month away from breaking. Stop. Before we go further, this is the piece most financial frameworks get wrong, and getting it wrong is why people abandon otherwise solid money systems within a few months. Restriction without release isn't discipline, it's a countdown to collapse. The research on behavioral change is consistent. Systems that eliminate all enjoyment don't produce long-term compliance. They produce short-term effort followed by abandonment, and often a compensatory spending binge. The same pattern that kills unsustainable diets kills unsustainable budgets. The alternative is a defined ceiling on lifestyle spending, not an elimination of it. After the future first 15% and the reserve building 10% are routed automatically, what remains, roughly 75% of your income, becomes your living budget. This covers genuine essentials: housing, transportation, utilities, groceries, healthcare, minimum debt payments, and it covers discretionary lifestyle: dinners out, travel, entertainment, clothing, hobbies, all of it within the cap. The psychological power of this structure comes from what it removes: the guilt. When you know the investment transfer has already run and the reserve contribution has already moved, the money remaining is genuinely yours to use. You don't spend it wondering if you should have saved instead. You've already saved. The question is closed. There's a critical discipline embedded in the 75% ceiling, though. Lifestyle expenses have a gravitational pull of their own. Housing, in particular, the single largest line item for most people, deserves scrutiny. The market constantly offers more space, better locations, nicer finishes. Each upgrade feels incremental. Collectively, they consume the margin. Keep housing below 30% of income if at all possible. It's the variable that most consistently makes or breaks the overall structure. Transportation is the second critical constraint. A vehicle is among the most expensive assets most people own, and unlike real estate, it loses value continuously from the moment it's acquired. The financial cost of owning a premium vehicle, payment, insurance, maintenance, fuel, depreciation, frequently exceeds $1,000 monthly. That's capital that could otherwise fund an investment account. Functional transportation that gets you where you need to go serves the same purpose for a fraction of the long-term cost. Within the 75% cap, separate your discretionary lifestyle spending visually, a dedicated account that receives a fixed monthly transfer. When that account reaches zero, discretionary spending stops until the next transfer. The structure makes the limit concrete without requiring ongoing conscious calculation. 3 ideas that rarely surface in conversations about money systems. Insight 1, the invisible raise. Every time the 15% investment allocation runs on a higher income than it ran the previous year, you receive a raise that goes entirely to your future self. The lifestyle doesn't expand, the investor does. Over a career, this invisible raise, the compounding difference between a 15% allocation on $55,000 versus the same percentage on $80,000, produces a gap in retirement outcomes that dwarfs almost any other variable. The real wealth-building event isn't the raise itself, it's whether the allocation percentage remains constant when the raise arrives. Insight 2, the financial gravity law. Unassigned money doesn't stay neutral, it moves toward spending, not through bad decisions, but through dozens of small, individually defensible ones. This is not a character flaw, it is a predictable behavioral pattern documented across income levels and cultures. Recognizing it as a system property rather than a personal failure changes the response entirely. The solution isn't more discipline, it's better pre-assignment. Every dollar needs a role before it arrives, because the moment it arrives unassigned, the gravity has already begun to act on them. Insight 3, the ownership threshold. There is a point in any sustained investment strategy where the returns generated by your portfolio in a given year begin to meaningfully approach and eventually exceed what you earn from your own work in that same year. This is not a distant abstraction. At historically average market returns, a portfolio of $300,000 generates roughly $30,000 in annual growth. For someone earning $60,000, that's half their salary, working without them.
The 15% allocation doesn't just build a retirement account, it is building a second income source, one that compounds and grows regardless of what happens at work. The sooner that source starts, the sooner it becomes significant. Let's come back to the opening question. You're earning more than you did, the balance looks roughly the same, the goals feel just as distant. Now you know why, and more importantly, you know it's fixable, not by earning more first, by building the structure first and letting the income flow into it. The difference between financial momentum and financial stagnation is almost never the paycheck. It's whether every dollar that crosses your account has been assigned a specific role before it arrives, or left to find its own purpose. The framework is straightforward. 15% to investments automatically before anything else. 10% to your emergency reserve until it's fully funded. The remaining 75% covers everything you need and everything you enjoy, with the clear-eyed recognition that housing and transportation are the two variables that most determine whether the cap holds. That's not a complex system, it's a clear one, and clarity automated is how financial change actually happens, not through motivation that peaks and fades, but through structure that runs whether you're paying attention or not. The kind of person who watches a video like this to the end is already different from most people, not smarter, not more capable, just more willing to look clearly at how things actually work and to act on what they find. Set up the automatic transfers this week, not next month, this week. The gap between knowing and doing is where financial progress goes to die. Subscribe if this kind of framework is useful to you. One new video every day.